Aloha from Hawaii. Hey guys, Randy back with another of the Chopping It Up with ... episodes. And if you're not aware, this is a labor of love I do with my partner, Jaime Loquier. We're running a site called DuplicationNation.com. A resource to people in the space. We're publishing an MLM confidential newsletter. So go to this site, check it all out. If you're here for the first time, this is not an interview. I get to invite a partner every week, and we just riff and we chop it up on anything to do with direct selling, leverage sales, six routines, self-development, try to get to know a little personal stuff, but it's the big boy, big girl conversations, what goes on behind the scenes, the reality of the business that most people will never teach you. So the person after the ... this week is my very, very, very dear long-term friend, Jeremiah Bradley, who has done incredible things in our space on the corporate end, and has we work together back in the day, in the Agile Enterprises days. He's got a new company that's, it's not even new anymore. It's been out a few years. He's killing it with that. So my friend, it's so great. And so I'm actually in Oahu. He is in Kauai, I believe.
Yeah.
Kauai, yeah. And so we just, through the magic of the internet, here we are chopping it up. It's so good to see you, my friend.
Oh, it's an amazing opportunity for me to be here with you. I've enjoyed watching all of these chopping it ups up to now. They're fun, they're informative, but they're new and exciting. So thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah, I always wonder, like, okay, where do I go? Where do I kick off the conversation? So with you, I think we should talk about the Bradley family royalty, because the Bradley family is kind of like network marketing royalty. Your father, Craig, was, service stuff to the industry. Then I don't remember if he was president or vice president at Melaleuca. He's just, and he is, I've always said he is the prince of network marketing, just one of the true good guys in the space. And you just have everybody you've got a lot of people in your family weaving in and out of the business. What's that been like, or what is that like for you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up in it, but I didn't really know it. I didn't appreciate it. All of our family trips when I was a kid, they were based around what event was my dad going to. So as a kid, I went to Alaska, and it was an amazing trip, but I didn't know what was going on. My dad had to disappear for a few hours every night, and he was doing some type of business presentation. And we're hitting Anchorage, and then we're going down to the peninsula, and we're hitting all these places. And I realized later on in life, oh, my dad was working in the hotel, with distributors and their prospects and different things. And yeah, when I went to Disney World for the first time, he had some events for Melaleuca that he was doing in Orlando. And honestly, most of our trips when I was a kid were based around where my dad needed to be for work. And yeah, he was a vice president for years at Melaleuca. And honestly, I thought it was kind of weird. I remember for the 4th of July, we'd always go up to Idaho Falls, and there was a big parade, and Melaleuca pretty much ran that parade, and they paid for the firework show at the end. And it was a huge fireworks show, and Melaleuca is a huge part of Idaho Falls. And I just remember thinking all of these people that my dad was with, I'm like, they're kind of kooky. These are kind of weirdos. I've never seen someone love some type of little oil so much. And so for me, it was just, I didn't appreciate it. I didn't understand it. But my dad went from Melaleuca. He spent years at USANA. Like you said, he and a partner that he was working with at USANA then started a company called Drive Marketing, where they would do a lot of the incentive things for pretty much every business in this space. And two of my brothers and a brother-in-law still own and run that business. And so we just have a lot of ties in this space. And it's I didn't officially get involved till I was getting ready to graduate college. And my dad was, getting the itch again. He loved the corporate side of things. So he was at Drive Marketing, but he had a partner talk to him about starting a new company. And I was graduating, getting ready to go start my career, actually studying to go to law school. And he asked if I wanted to come and run a customer service department just to start things out. I certainly didn't see it as a career or anything like that. It was more, okay, that's a good little starting job. I think he said, what do you need to start out with? I've been married a couple of years. My wife was pregnant, and she was working full time at the bank. I was studying. So I said, well, I think if I made $25,000 a year, I could get by. And he came back and countered at 28,000. And I thought, I am making it. This is amazing. They came in higher than I was even asking. And so, yeah, I started out as the first customer service rep for a company that I think a few short months later became a part of. And those were the beginning days of Agile. And so that's where I got my start. I didn't anticipate ever working in this space, but from that day on, I have, and I've loved it, every minute of it.
So you realize you're the exact opposite of the rest of the world. The rest of the world, the son would be telling the father, I want to go into network marketing. And the father would be saying, why don't you go to law school? You could be a lawyer.
Yeah. And I don't think my dad was anticipating pulling me from that, but it was a fun ride, and there's a lot of opportunity, and I enjoyed it. I feel like I thrived in those early days. Whatever I was asked to do, I would jump on it. Quickly went from customer service and just kind of started climbing the ladder there. And from the early days, got to work with leaders like you, some of the other leaders there. And I loved that part of it. I loved being able to, be thrown a hard task and figure out what we have to do to get it done.
Yeah, to say you started to rise through the ranks is such an understatement. Because, I remember Eric told me once, hey, the company's assigned Jeremiah just for the diamonds. He's moving up from customer service. He's going to be the direct liaison between the diamonds and the company. And you took on that responsibility. And you were amazing at it. And of course, for people who don't know, you ended up being the co-CEO of Agile, and worked all along the way. And you just did amazing with you. And of course, Jeff Higginson, who many people who watch the show will know, we did an episode with him a couple of months back. You and Jeff were the co-CEOs, and having kind of getting thrown into that job in a chaos when they had
right?
Yeah, they terminated the CEO, and investors wanted to pull out, and cash crunch was terrible, and you guys were in this basically no-win scenario, and you guys really held it together.
Yeah, it was fun. It was I think our very first, we did crazy amounts of revenue those first 8-9 years of Agile, but never made a dime. And that within that first year of Jeff and I taking over as co-CEO, we were able to turn a profit for the first time. So it was fun, but it was a crazy year when they kind of ousted the old regime and asked us to run it. And that's a hard thing, being co-CEO. When you hear that is no easy task, but as you know, Jeff and I, we couldn't be more opposite. So that's kind of why it worked. I have my strengths clear over on this side, and Jeff is opposite, and he does those things, and we did it well. And we had a respect for each other and enjoyed each other. And then going back to the family thing, Jeff had his two brothers, Scott and Sam, working with him. And then Craig was still working there. My little brother, Zach, was working, and it was it was fun. The Bradleys and Higginsons got along very well. And I think that's a big part of why it worked, why it continued to work, and why we had so much fun with it, because fun was a big part of what we were doing.
And I still to this day will shout to the rooftops, had you guys not been saddled with the previous debt and had to sell it to the new guys who destroyed it,
Yeah.
I believe Agile would be a multi-billion-dollar company today, just a pioneer in the space, just killing it in every area.
Yeah, it's too bad that there was some greed and some things that happened to get that debt, and piled with stuff that we couldn't control. But we had great people, great ideas. And it was fun. It's definitely set me up for where we are now. I learned a lot I always tell people I learned more in my first 10 years in this industry. I learned way more about what not to do than what you should do. And that for me has been invaluable. I mean, when presented with a challenge, I often think now, all right, I actually know 4 or 5 things that we should not do because we've done those things and they do not work. And then we look at the things that we think will work. But honestly, I say it tongue in cheek, but it's the truth. It's, you can learn about how to be successful oftentimes just by seeing what didn't work.
All the time. I think there's so somebody, let's dig into that deeper. What are some of those things you learn not to do that you still see people doing in the space, and you must be just like, oh, I can't believe they're going there. Don't they know anything about history? Have they ever studied the profession?
It's funny. A lot of it, this is going to sound like I'm preaching almost, but I'm going to say if most of what you're doing goes back to greed, then it's probably going to bite you in the butt eventually. And what I say is, what's your incentive? What is the reason you are doing what you're doing? What is the reason you're telling your distributors to reach out? Is it all about what they can gain and those types of things? And so, as you know, I am currently involved in a company and we sell activewear. Well, we started that a few years after another company was selling stretchy pants, not activewear, but just stretchy pants and they got really big and then they just imploded. There was a documentary on, I think it's Amazon, I can't remember what it is, but everyone knows that company. Lula Rich is the documentary about him, right? Okay. Anyway, as we were doing this, we had to make sure that we were not put into the same bucket as them. And as you look at them, a lot of it was front end loading. A lot of it was just, how do you bring in more people than you're losing? How, what is it? Is it just all about an opportunity and it doesn't matter what you're selling? When you do things like that, it's not residual. And the reason why I say it's not residual is because it's not lasting. That can't last. And so we were in business for a couple of years and we were running with 4 or 5 employees. We did everything. The guy doing our finance did it at night for free for us. And he said, hey, if you guys ever need a loan, and I said, we don't. We try to run everything. We cash flow it all. I've been through that where you can't handle it. But he's like, well, just go meet with a guy from Zion's Bank. Zion's a big bank here in Utah. So the guy comes as a favor to our friend, and he's got a list of about 10 reasons why they'll never do business with anyone in our space. And it was basically a checklist of all of the reputations that the bad companies in this space have and why they don't want to do business. And I didn't know this till afterwards because we got a loan that day, approved for a loan, but he basically had a checklist of all of these things. And this is from a banker's point of view, right? I can answer your question based on what the banks would say, why they don't want to give loans. And basically, they don't believe that some of the companies actually have a real product. They don't believe that you're selling an opportunity as opposed to a real, so those types of things. So it was amazing as he asked all of these questions that the company we were doing this, I'm like, that's not us. And I would explain it. And afterwards, he showed me this list and he just said, you know, this is what most of us banks think about your space. And it's amazing to see a company coming in and wanting to do things where you're selling a real product to real customers. And so I think one of the big things is, do your customers value your product, whether there is a commission or not? And we don't even need to get into commissions because there's commissions everywhere. You talked with Jeff Higginson and he talked about the first job he had selling trucks. Well, he's making a commission selling that truck. You know, in every business, people are making money for doing what they're doing, but there's this, you know, it's kind of taboo in our space to think that that's why we do it. But if you remove all of that, do your customers still value your product? And I would say that's the number one thing, in my opinion, that we have to make sure is, what are we selling? And is it a value? And is it a value at the price we're selling it at? You know, so those are some of the things that I think are extremely important. Right now, we sell about 80% of what we sell goes to a customer. Doesn't go to anyone interested in making any commission or anything like that. And so if you can do things like that, that is what would set a company up for what I call residual income, because I do believe in residual income. I think it's an amazing thing. It's what helped us get to where we are. If my wife and I decided, let's go start an activewear company and let's compete with Lululemon and Nike, let's go open a storefront, we probably would have never done $1,000 worth of sales. I mean, we would have never made it. This industry, this space is why we are where we are, because we believe in this channel. We believe that when done right, I mean, you can thrive. And so we took advantage in a good way of what we think is an amazing way to share a product. And that is, you know, through direct sales. So we did it in a way that I'm proud of. You know, we went out and most of our reps are just finding customers. They're just sharing it like you would tell someone about a new movie you've seen. You're not planning on getting any money by telling your friend to go check out the new Mission Impossible, right? So when you're sharing something without a real incentive, where someone doesn't feel like, oh, I haven't talked to this guy in 6 years and all of a sudden he's calling me up, not because he cares about me, but he wants to make a dime off of me, right? And so when you have that product that's just a natural, authentic share, so to speak, it's easier.
I just last week listened to Tim Ferriss did a podcast with, I hope I'm getting his name right from memory, Dan Cressy, who I believe is the strength and conditioning coach for the Yankees. And it's very jargon, right? It's just, so the subluxual this and the inflection versus the extension and it's because he's a savant when it comes to the microfascia and the skeletal structure, and he's talking about the mechanics of pitchers when they're throwing baseballs, which is, you know, one of the most horrific things you could ever do to the human body. You have guys who are throwing 105 mile an hour now. But I was fascinated with this course because of my own health and my having 4 spinal surgeries and still playing softball and going to the World Series in a month and a half. And right. So I sent that to Art Jonak because he's got his tonal and he's doing it. I'm like, dude, you got to listen to this thing. I sent it to Gianmarco Masto, who's a world-class swimmer who just did a chopping up with him, just came out this week. I sent it to Mauricio Domensain over at Immunitech because he's another tonal guy and doing his workout thing. That's where when you really feel something about that and you don't get a commission there. Tim Ferriss isn't sending me any money, but and even someone else, I can't remember, someone else I sent it to. But my Rolfer, my God, my Rolfer, who's another savant. He's just, it's like he comes to the door for a session. I open the door, hey, welcome in, and I walk, and he'll say, what happened to your right calf? Like, how do you know about that? Well, I can tell by the way you're walking. Don't you see your hip platform is all off? I'm wearing jeans, and he can spot. I'm like, he's working on my neck one day, and he's like, "Were you at the dentist recently?" I'm like, "Yeah, I had a root canal." How do you know that? He said, "Oh my God, the muscles in your jaw, and they were, you know." So I sent him that, and he just hallucinating over it, right? The I think it's interesting because I think of how I viewed the profession, because I've been doing this longer than anybody on earth who's still alive. Anybody who started before me is already dead, right? So, 44 years I'm doing this now. And it was, okay, makeup, skincare, nutrition, this is it, vitamins, don't try to sell anything else. Has to be products, services will never work. It's got to be, and there are, I think, guidelines: unique, exclusive, highly consumable. Is there an emotional connection? There's a lot of attributes that can help you create a winning product line. But then you look at Wes Linden, we did one of these. He's doing utility warehouse over in the UK. His people have 300 customers, 400 customers. He has people who have 1,000 customers, and it's true residual, because it's like your internet service, your gas service, your electricity, your water. So you get them switched over, they're there for 100 years. And I'm working with a company now out of California that's doing a retirement and life insurance and stuff where people have to get licensed. So that's a very different dynamic. But you see A.L. Williams and Primerica, and I mean, these are billion-dollar companies, and you doing the activewear. If I looked at activewear on the survey, I'd say, how many stretchy pants can women buy anyway? But having watched some of your, and for people who don't know, you were one of the people when I wrote, what's the name of my book? Direct Selling Success. You were one of the people that I interviewed. So come on, tell me how you're doing this. What are you doing on social media? Because you guys have really found a way to make social media work in a really good way. And as I followed some of your reps on social, and I looked, and this question of how many stretchy pants can women buy, the answer seems to be a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I was watching a documentary about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they were talking about the part where he comes out and makes twins with Danny DeVito. And Danny DeVito said, "I don't know how many people have seen the movie, but my bank account says that everyone in the country owns that DVD." And then he chuckles. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people are buying stretchy pants. But what we like is, I did a tour for a guy in our space, and he asked me 10 times as we were walking through our warehouse, and he was just amazed at how massive it was. He worked at Mona V and New Skin, and he'd been at some of these big companies, and he's going through this massive warehouse, and he just keeps looking at me saying, and he's watching us ship out by the semis all of these orders, and he could not grasp, because it's what he knows. He couldn't grasp that we were sending as much stuff out without having an auto ship program. And he just said, "It doesn't make sense. How are you doing this?" And I had to say to him, I'm like, "Look, we aren't selling a new pair or the same pair of leggings to the same rep every single month. That's not how we do it. Our rep, every week we come out with new stuff, but they are selling this activewear to hundreds of their own customers. And so if they've got 150 customers, and they can sell 3 or 4 things to each one each month, different things, a sports bra, but it's a legit new customer every week, then they're doing great. And they don't have to feel like they're obligated to buy a new legging or the same legging or whatever. It's not that same model. We didn't plan it this way. We stumbled upon this. What we did was we went out there and created an amazing product, and we found people that wanted to share it. And then instead of telling them how to do it, we thought we knew, and we came up with plans, but it didn't work. And then they eventually told us what was working, and we followed that. So what we did was we listened to our reps, and they told us what worked. And what worked was, we didn't plan on this, but what we eventually fell into, we sold out our first week or two of products. We were ordering as much stuff, and quickly found we did what we call the restock 2 Wednesdays in a row with new product. And all of a sudden everyone started saying, can't wait till next Wednesday. And we thought, all right, we'll do that. So from that point on, every Wednesday, we've launched new items. So from about 2 months in, we call it Zaya Wednesday, and we launch new stuff. And so our reps immediately just share it with all of their customers. So we don't have an auto ship program. We're not like a lot of our, peers in the space. We just launch new stuff, and they share that immediately on social media, whatever it is now. At that point, it was mainly Instagram and Facebook, but now there's, as you know, there's multiple different ways, and we don't tell our reps what social media platform they should use. Depending on if they're 22 or 45, they might have a different kind of social media that they are comfortable with. And so they all get to do that. And with algorithms and different things, Facebook might be working 1 month and it doesn't work the next month. So they find out what's working, and then they duplicate that with their team. But even within our company, different teams have different ways to do it. And what I learned from you is, I learned this very early on from you guys, is corporate does corporate things, and the team, those guys can do their things. And so I'm not here to tell them what they do. I'm here to make sure that we have good product, that we're paying commissions on time, that it's shipping properly. And those guys go out and figure out what works. But, one of the things for us was we didn't force it. It's kind of like water's going to find the path of least resistance as it's going down. And we did that. We found out what worked. And so, it's not an auto ship program for us.
So many ways we could branch off of that. The other example is my dear friends Hilda and Orion from Zinzino over in Scandinavia. We were, I don't know, I think it's South Beach. Ori and I were having lunch or dinner or something, and he told me, my goal is that one day Zinzino will have 1 million customers who don't even know it's an MLM company. And this is like 10 years ago. So that idea was heresy. Like, come on, you want everyone to know you're MLM. The money's in the recruiting, sell the big packs, get the duplication. He wouldn't mind me sharing this. They're a public company, so it's all public knowledge anyway. But they literally have 500,000 auto ship customers right now. So he's halfway there. And of course, many of them know it's an MLM company, but still 500,000 people on auto ship. And it was and I've been working with those guys for, probably 20 years or something. Off and on, teaching their people and speaking at all their events and all of that, training their guys and working with corporate. It's off and on with Doug and the corporate team there sometimes. Jonak is their CEO here in the US now. So him and I talk 2,700 times a day anyway. And I remember when we first looked at, they have a pinprick blood test to check because they have this essential oil thing. And I just thought, God, how is this going to duplicate? Same thing when over in your valley there, when New Skin did the pharma, what was the name of that? Yeah, they did that scanner.
Yep.
Yeah, and they crushed with that. So I've got clients I'm working with now saying, guys, find a blood test, find some kind of test because when I took the Zinzino one, I did the test myself because Hilda told me, Randy, you're sick too much, take this test. So I take the test, I get the results back, and it basically says, you are about to die. Write your will, call your mother. Don't wait 10 minutes because according to your blood work, you should already be 6 feet underground. So I'm like, what? And Rob Horkings, our mutual friend, he had a similar thing. He had like a heart. I don't know if he had a new valve or a pacemaker or whatever, but so he has like an app that he could track that he has to. He tracks his heartbeat, everything, and he monitors it or whatever. And so he tried their products one night and woke up the next morning and could read his thing. It was like, oh my God. And so there's that kind of thing that you might say, well, I don't know how that's going to duplicate. How many people are going to buy one of those scanners? Was it $500 or whatever? I remember there was a company that had the special scale that you could stand on. It would measure your body mass for, your fat mass versus your muscle mass and things like that. And so there's a lot of things like that maybe on the surface you'd say, well, that can't duplicate, but and just this, this company I'm working with in California, they're Arcshire Financial. They have people who are killing it. And I mean, killing it, just doing amazing things, making amazing incomes. But they got to go through licensing, right? It's not like, hey, watch my Zoom meeting at 2:00 and I'll sign you up. And tomorrow we're going to do your first meeting. No, they got to go through this registration and training and certification process. But they're doing amazing with it. And I think what I see when I put it all together, whether it's in Zeno or Utility Warehouse, what you guys are doing at Zaya, is you're really bringing sexy back to the customer space of, no, this isn't just some bullshit where everybody joins the genealogy and we all make money because we're buying our own, drinking our own Kool-Aid. There really has been a substantial movement into, yes, we call it direct selling. That means there's selling. We call it network marketing. That means there's some marketing. We call it leverage sales because there's sales. And I think that's probably, for me, looking back over the 44 years, I think that's the biggest change I see is how, and of course, most of us like me, we got dragged into this kicking and screaming. I was one of those guys standing on the stage saying, why would you screw around with getting customers? You sign up the leaders, you get the kit, you make a $400 fast start bonus. They go out, they sponsor 20 people. Those 20 people turn into 200 people. If we all just using the products ourselves, because that's what Don Fela taught. Right? I remember having lunch with Don Fela and he told me, Randy, if everybody buys $100 worth of product every month, it doesn't matter. Just go throw it in the river. We all buy $100. We all make money. And I was young. I was working, I think, my second company when I met him. And I'm like, wow, he wrote the napkin book. He's like the guru. So he told me the products don't work. So back in those days, I had joined this company that had like 3 or 4 catalogs, and you bought from the catalogs each month. So it was a terrible idea. There was no way, there was no profit margin there to make it work. But what the hell did I know? I'm like 2 years in the business or something. But you could get a gift certificate for, instead of picking what you want, you say, okay, well, I'm buying $100 gift certificate from the electronics catalog. So I was doing, back in those days, I was, smoked 3 packs a day. And this is the days when you could smoke in public without getting assaulted or arrested or anything. So at my opportunity meetings, once a month, I would bring my $100 gift certificate and I would light it on fire. And then I would use the gift certificate to light my cigarette. And I'd be like, see, it doesn't matter. I just burned up the $100, but I made $8,000 this month. And it worked great until it didn't. Because of course you get the people who just joined and they're not making any money and they're saying, well, I don't know if why would I spend $100 this month? Because I don't have anybody under me. I'll wait until I have some people under me. And then the people one level above them are like, what the hell? I sponsored these people and they didn't buy this month. So I'm not making any money. I just spent $100 on junk I don't really want or need, in many cases. And of course, so I had worked really hard 4 or 5 months creating this excitement and building this team, which maybe it was 1,500 people or something. And it just collapsed in 60 days because nobody was using the products. Nobody had that bonding.
Yep. So one of the big things that this space has to do a better job of, all of us, is making sure the product is the number one thing that we value in a company. It's got to be a good product that people want, regardless. If the company were to go out of business, people should be calling to find out how can they get their hands on the product before it disappears. That's what the product has to be. It has to be that good, and people need to want it, whether there's a commission tied to it or not. And so,
well, you know what? You were witness to this because you and I and Joel Rockwood are in a text group. Because for people around the world who don't know, April 6th is actually an international holiday because Maya, me, and Joel all share that birthday. So I wrote him, and you saw this, maybe a month ago, like, hey, Joel, somebody in the world somewhere has to be making Umi. I need some, which was a product we had in Agile.
Yeah.
And he, of course, said, well, I actually have a client in Thailand who's I did a formula for them. It's a little different. And I have back in my refrigerator in Miami, I have Umi in there. And I haven't got a commission check from that company for 15 years.
Yeah.
Right. That's the kind of stuff.
No, and
that's
it's
the level of loyalty we got to create.
Yeah. And I remember from the very beginning, you were always, you would at a meeting say, hey, are you corporate guys even taking this product? It meant something to you. So because if not, like I said, I use that word authentic. If you're out, it's just a sales job. If you don't authentically believe in what you're talking about, what you're sharing, what you're selling, then, I believe it just makes it that much easier also. I mean, this space can be hard. You can have momentum, and when you don't have momentum, it can feel really, really hard. But if you're just sharing something that you authentically love, then it at least takes that pain away, because we've all been through that where it can get very painful. And so if you got a product you believe in and love, then you get through it.
Yeah, the corporate thing you mentioned, I can remember that because we had I was the head of the distributor advisory board. And so you guys would schedule a meeting and Big Higgy would organize it. And I came into one meeting and I'm like, okay, there's the cheese Danish, there's the chocolate chip cookies, there's the M&Ms, there's the diet sodas, there's the Coke, and I'm like, Higgy, do you know we're a wellness company? We're supposed to be, and of course we got to change, and we started to have fresh fruit and healthy stuff and whatever. But yeah, because it's too hard to lose. It's too easy to lose sight of that when the kind of money we make can be so lucrative.
Well, yeah, we have a friend of ours who used to say, give me a number 2 pencil and I'll sell it as long as there's commissions. And I just wholeheartedly believe that mentality is what gives this space a bad reputation at times that we all have to spend years overcoming.
Yeah, 100%. But it really is changing, I think, with the success of so many companies who are doing so well with the customer space, I think. And you guys are a perfect example of it.
Yeah. Speaking of wellness, you've always looked healthy, but you look as healthy as you've looked since I've known you. What are you doing?
I'm recovering from being very unhealthy. I was sick for 3 or 4 years, and by sick, I'm speaking relative, but I just wasn't like, when I was 45, I said, man, I feel better at 45 than 35. And at 50, I said, at 50, I feel better than I did at 45. And at 55 and at 60, I still could say that. I'm 64 now. I can't say that the last few years. And what happened is I'm doing so much work down in Latam, going to Peru and places where the water is just contaminated. If you weren't raised on it, if you haven't developed that immunity. So I was getting all this sick digestive tract stuff. So I was doing antibiotics all the time. So I ended up doing so many antibiotics that I got, it's called histamine intolerance. And so it makes you allergic to everything. Stuff that I was eating my whole life, like fruit and vegetable, like tomatoes. Tomatoes were like thermonuclear to me. Not that I didn't usually eat tomatoes, but I ate tomato sauce. I love pizza and pasta and stuff like that. And so I've spent like 3 or 4 years getting bad diagnosis after bad diagnosis and doing more antibiotics. And, and then, so we actually had to do an antibiotic that cost, I think it's $3,000 a week. That's one antibiotic. There's no substitute. It's the only antibiotic that only works in your small intestine because I had bacterial overgrowth in my small intestine. So I had to do that even though antibiotics were making me sick, but I was so sick I had to, it's like if you've got cancer and you got to do chemo. The chemo makes you sick, but you got to do it to kill the tumor or whatever. So I was like that. And so I was taking all these mega supplements from all of our beautiful network marketing companies that have such amazing products, and they were all making me sicker. And then I said, okay, I'm stopped taking everything. I'm going to do a detox. I'm going to only eat raw fruits and vegetables, which is always my go-to when I want to clean up and just, eat clean, breathe clean, And that made me so sick because citrus fruit was like poison to me. So it took me, and then going to allergy and whatever. It was actually my dentist was the one who said, Randy, your problem is allergies. You have these 5-mile long eyelashes, and you have what we call allergy shiners. It looked like I had a black eye because like the black circles under my eyes were so dark. He says, that's allergy. I'm going to send you to allergy specialist. And I went and did the testing and realized that's what it was. So now I'm like on the comeback trail. Had to stop everything and then just reintroduce, like even just probiotics, which would be, in theory, the healthiest thing I could do to repopulate my digestive tract and my gut, were horrible for me. Instant, and so it was like really, I've had 3-4 years where I really was not the way I want to be. And I feel like now I just got so lethargic. It's just chronic fatigue. I would wake up, it would take me 25 minutes to crawl out of bed. I'd try to do cardio. I'd go down, I'd do like 3 minutes. If I made my bed, I was breathing like Darth Vader. And now I'm like, all right, I'm back doing cardio every morning. I'm back doing my workouts every day. Not quite like, I have a couple workouts that might be 90 minutes some days, and I'm only doing like 50 or 60 because I feel like, I'm overdoing it. But yeah, I'm finally getting back to where I want to be.
Good. Well, you look great. That's for sure.
Well, thank you. But I'm in Hawaii, so
yeah,
I have all this aloha energy that's healing me.
Yeah.
So what's up? What's on your list? What points?
Well,
did you
I'll say
bring
this.
that-
every time this topic gets brought up, I think of Randy, and this is why, because as I've read some of your books and I've heard you speak probably 10,000 times, you've always brought up topics in the future, and you actually talked about some of these things years ago. You talked about how pretty soon our girlfriends or boyfriends were going to be virtual and things. So I got to know, what is your take right now on AI, on chat, on all of that stuff, good, bad, and how do we adapt to it? I mean, I got to hear your take on it.
It's so, I mean, it's so cool. I have a high level coaching program called my Mastermind Council, a Breakthrough You and Mastermind Council. And I have a training that I'm doing from here tomorrow at 8 a.m. Hawaii time on AI and how it impacts authors and speakers and coaches. Because people are just saying, oh, I don't need to write a blog post anymore. I just say, hey, chat GPT, write me a blog post on whatever. And what they don't realize is it's plagiarism, because that chat bot is, that LLM is many times just going and downloading 4 paragraphs direct from somebody's essay, somebody's PhD thesis, somebody's website. And it's total plagiarism. And it's also downloading shit that's not even true. It's like crazy. So I'm teaching my guys tomorrow, my proteges, how they can use that stuff, and because it can be really helpful in ways of, so like what I did, for instance, is, so I was working on, I won't put the client out there, but I'm working on a origin story for a client, an MLM company, because a big part of the marketing that I feel every company has to have to be really successful has to be built on a foundation. One of them is the product narrative, right? What is the reason behind what is the story behind the product? The reason why I joined Agile all those years ago was when I heard the story and they said these gels and this assimilation, and I'm like, this is a story I can tell, because I'm a writer at essence. So I'm always looking for, what is the story that's going to get people talking at the water cooler the next day? And today it would be, what would be the story that's going to get people talking on Instagram? Hey, I went to this presentation last night, and from the days of the Berardi brothers, where they had no run pantyhose, right? And they would do meetings and they would put a pantyhose on stage and they'd get a screwdriver and show you couldn't get a run in these pantyhose. That's a story. When Visalis was saying shake tastes like cake, that's a story. So I looked at Agile and I said, suspension gel technology. And I wrote Glenn Jensen and I said, call your attorney, have them trademark the phrase suspension gel technology. We can build a story around this, right? So I think it's always, so I'm working on this origin story. And so what I did is I wrote what I felt was a draft, but I didn't think it was like sexy enough. So I went to Chat GPT and I said, hey, I would like you to summarize the benefits of this product line in the voice of Randy Gage, because that is going to protect me against a lot of plagiarism. Now that works for me because there's a lot of my work online. There's some people couldn't say that because they don't have anything. I've got 14 books. I've got 10,000 blog posts. I have 500 podcasts. I have 8 trillion zillion web pages and Facebook posts and Twitter and everything. So I can get it. And still I didn't use that copy, but what I got was 2 sentences that I thought were amazing that I added to the existing copy I wrote. Other thing, like what I'll tell these guys tomorrow, is write your blog post and then say, okay, Chat GPT, give me 5 compelling headlines for a story about women's activewear. and it'll give you, or say 10 or say 15, and it'll give
Yeah.
you stuff like that. But where I'm at today, I mean, I'm very bullish on the space. I think Mark Andreessen wrote a great blog post, if anyone wants to Google it, about why AI is not going to take all the jobs. Every time we've had, really, they said the radio was going to kill jobs, television was going to kill jobs, electricity was going to kill jobs, the internet was going to kill jobs. Every technological development, the car, was all going to kill jobs, and none of them have killed jobs. They have created more jobs. They've created a bigger economy, because now there's people can, it takes products that were really too expensive, where only the wealthy people could buy them, and it makes them mass produced so everyone can get them. Like today, everybody has an iPhone. There are homeless people who have mobile phones, right? A lot of them. I can go to Peru, a third world country, and there's, in the country where they don't even have, out in the country where they don't have electricity, and they have mobile phones, because the costs have come down because of technology. So I'm bullish on that. I'm very negative on social media. I think this is one of the big, I think it's the existential threat of our generation, that for people who want to dig a little deeper, at randygage.com, I wrote a post about 2 weeks ago, how social media is killing your prosperity. And I've gotten off of it. I use it for my business. I have a crack commando team who does my Instagram account and posts on some of my Facebook groups and takes my work and puts it out there. I occasionally interact on Twitter. That's, if you see a tweet, that's me. Anywhere else, it's not me. I went to less than 10 minutes a day on Twitter, because I just found, if I spend an hour on social media, I'm so much less productive, so much unhappier, more depressed, more strident, more want to fight, more. It's just, so you have Truth Social, Twitter, the fight platforms. They're the polarizing ones. And then you have TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, which are the narcissism platforms, which is like right now, I'm on Waikiki Beach, right? So if I want to be what everyone else would do, I would turn my laptop around and I'll take a picture, and there is, what is it, Diamond Head, and there's all the surfers on the water here. And I'd say, oh, it's my office for the day, right? Because it's the narcissist. And I put that on Instagram, because that's the narcissism channel, which is, hey, here's the new Ferrari I bought. Oh, here I am flying in my private jet. Oh, here I am frolicking on the beach in Fiji and Tahiti. Here I am at this 1-star Michelin restaurant, and look at the hors d'oeuvres I'm eating. It's just fuels your narcissism. It's so unhealthy. You have so many teenagers with the depression and the suicides, and because the filters on there, that kids are so self-conscious, and they're
You sound like a parent, Randy. This is what I'm doing to my kids every day.
I do. I do. I know.
It's funny. My wife and I, we read a book, and we have what we call the point system. So our kids get an allowance, but they earn it. So they have to do their chores. They have to wake up at a certain time. They have to go to school. They have to get certain grades. They do all of these things. And as they do these things, they get points. And the one that they fight the most on is electronics. We have, on my wife's phone, we can look at everything they're on. And if they're on social media for too long, they don't get the point that day. And without any question, it is the one that they fight back on the most. It's scary how addicting it is. I mean, they would rather me take food away for 3 days than take social media away. That's
for sure.
Because
even though the food is addictive, because it's genetically designed to, there's a reason nacho flavored tortilla chips taste better than celery, because they've been genetically engineered to taste better. They've been genetically engineered to feed the bad bacteria in your intestine and make you crave more sugar, more yeast, more, right? That's how, but nothing is as addictive as the algorithms on social media.
Yeah.
And that's what that blog post is about, is how there's nobody on earth who's smart enough to outsmart those computer algorithms. The example, I just talked about this on catch the last show I did, the Chopping It Up I did with Dana Collins, just maybe 2 weeks ago. Here's the example I put in the blog and talked about with Dana. If you, and somebody doesn't believe me, just change the items and use something different and do it as a thought experiment. I'll prove it's true. If I went to my accounts today and I said, I've been hearing rumors about a secret cabal of terrorists who are assassinating school teachers with red Toyotas. Has anybody heard anything about this? It sounds crazy. It can't be true, right? It's just it's crazy shit, right? Put that in your post. Somebody's going to send you, well, yeah, it is crazy, but I had a friend and she was a history teacher in middle school and she died and they didn't know the cause. And someone else is going to say, well, I had a friend who was a teacher and she died in a car accident. I don't know if it was a red Toyota. I think it was a Toyota. I don't know for sure if it was a red one. And what'll happen by the second or third generation of comments and replies, somebody will send a thing, red Toyota stolen at the Town and Country Mall, which is a news bulletin from KSLA Channel 6. Red Toyota was stolen from the Town and Country Mall. They'll send that link to you and you're going to click on it. And then someone else will send you a link that elementary school teacher dies under mysterious circumstances. And you're going to click on it. By the time you get to the fourth click, those computer algorithms know just how to get you to click on the fifth link and just how to get you to create a sixth link. Because they only make money when they can sell your eyeballs to advertisers. Mm-hmm. So Facebook needs you to be on that site as long as possible. Elon needs you to be on Twitter as long as possible. Zuckerberg needs you to be on Instagram as long as possible. TikTok, forget about it. We're talking about the Chinese Communist Party and what they're doing to our people. They need you on. And so we're taking the brightest people of our generation, and instead of building new startups, we're saying, hey, we will give you equity in this startup if you can show us how to take people who like to post pictures of macrame, if you can show us how to keep them on a site for 11 minutes more a day, we're going to give you equity of the company. You'll be a millionaire 3 years from now when we float our IPO. And hey, so they are hiring astrophysicists and PhD psychologists and the most brilliant people in the world. And they're all getting hired at the tech startups. People who could be taking us to Mars are instead showing us how to win a political argument on Twitter, right? And so if you come back in 6 months, there will be a group of thousands of people who believe that there's a terrorist group who is killing school teachers with red Toyotas, and you're probably a member of that group. And if the higher your IQ is, the more likely it is that you're going to be susceptible to the conspiracy theories. Because you think, I'm so smart, nobody could manipulate me. I mean, if you see, Rudy Giuliani was considered one of the greatest legal minds in America. There was a time people believed that when he was the district attorney, Southern District, New York, right? People talked about him for Supreme Court. I mean, if you listen to his podcast today, you'd say, this guy is batshit crazy. And he is, because he reads the posts on social media, and look at the My Pillow guy, look at Carrie Lake out in Arizona, some of these, just the My Pillow guy. I mean, he's an entrepreneur. He built a really successful company. He has good pillows. I bought some of his pillows, right? Now he's just crazy. He's got so much social media feeds, and it happens on, don't think I'm just talking about the Trumpsters. There's just as many crazy people, tinfoil hat, conspiracy theories in the left-wing nut jobs as well. There's no human being on earth who has the ability, the discernment to stop yourself from being brainwashed. Like, I've done so much work. My day job, I always say my day job is teaching the principles of prosperity. That's my real work that I'm passionate about. And so I'm always looking at what's the memes and the mind viruses and the programming about money. So literally, as you and I are recording this, I think maybe 2 hours ago, this submarine company that went to see the Titanic, they've said, hey, we think everybody's dead. So because we're recording this, so we're in late June 2023 for somebody who's watching it later. This was the submersible that was exploring the Titanic. Yesterday, there was an article in a big major national newspaper that said, the headline was about that the guy who runs the sub company, the CEO who's probably now dead in the sub, there was a big cover story on and he's a billionaire. So the cover story was, billionaire sub company gave to many GOP causes. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, here's a guy in a sub who's probably going to die if we can't rescue him in the next 10 hours. And we're going to put out a clickbait article to rile up all of the libs, because they'll say, yes, he's a billionaire and he gives money to GOP candidates or GOP causes. It's like, what have we come to? How is that? How could we lose our humanity that way, that when somebody is fighting for their life, we're going to start to analyze who they gave political contributions to?
Yeah.
And, it's like, I remember when I lived in Hollywood, back when we had, people have to Google this, we had things, we called them newspapers. And you would open your door and there would be this print thing we called a newspaper in front. So I opened my door and I look, and the headline says, millionaire arrested for murder. And I thought, isn't that fascinating? I have never seen a newspaper where it said, broke person arrested for murder, right? It's the guilt by association. It's the clickbait. This is how polarized we've become. And it's social media is the biggest driving force of that right now. So like for my team and my clients' team, I'm saying, create a separate social media channel for your business and keep it on business, and set a timer, how much time you're going to allow yourself to be on social media, and don't even do a personal one. You really will be able to live your entire life without posting what you ate for lunch each day, and the world will still keep spinning.
Yeah, no, it just sucks time. I mean, and I remember in our days at Agile, Facebook was first growing, and we would hear constantly from leaders saying, well, I'm just, with Agile being so international, I'm spending so much time on Facebook. And we used to talk at the corporate office, like, if someone's on Facebook for 4 hours, that means 4 minutes was probably productive. And the rest of it is just looking at what your high school friends are doing, or what, it's just so much wasted time. And not just wasted time, it's especially for kids, it can hurt. You've got the mental things that happen. So yeah, it's a tough gig.
So harmful, so harmful. And so I'm very excited about social media. So I've been experimenting a lot because I'm doing this training for my people tomorrow. So I've been doing this for my blog. I wrote a blog a couple of weeks ago about getting old and how we deal with it or whatever. And so I was talking about Michael Jackson and Prince, because both those guys and I were born at the same time. So I grew up as they grew up. They're both dead. I'm still here, right? And I was talking about how the idea of the old James Dean, where live fast, die young, and leave a good-looking corpse. And, that mentality versus how do we grow and age gracefully and whatever. So I went to, there's people might know about it, Stable Diffusion, which is a generative AI. So there's a version where they took off the guardrails, right? You can create a jailbreak. Like if you go to Chat GPT now, it'll, and you say, our Jonak is a MAGA mouth breather. Why do you think that is? They will say, sorry, I'm not allowed to talk about politics. That's, they have these guardrails. So of course, the hackers break the guard. They do what we call a jailbreak, where they take off the limiting things, like don't do death threats, don't talk about politics, don't do, child abuse or whatever. Well, all of this stuff can be manipulated. So I've got a version of Stable Diffusion with the guardrails off. And so you go on there's a Reddit thread about it. You go on there and you look in there and you say, oh my God, we're all going to be dead in 10 minutes. It's scary.
Yeah.
But like when I was writing the blog post, I said, I asked to generate a picture of Prince as an elderly person. And it took me 5 or 6 generations to do it, but I came up with a really cool image, which I put and I used for my blog. So you see this guy with gray hair and like wrinkled up, but he's still wearing a purple suit and he's got a sexy guitar and it's Prince, how Prince might have looked if he was 85 years old or something. So there's such potential for that. There's such cool things you could do. Now, I remember when AOL first came out. I didn't even have a computer. I didn't do anything on computers because I'm not a digital native, right? I was born long before this stuff came out, but I had a partner in the pizza shop and he had a computer, and the computer had AOL, whatever their first thing was in the dial-up days. And I was able to play chess against the computer, and I could beat the computer like 7 out of 10 times. And that was amazing to me. Now, there's no human on earth who can win a game against the computer, right? Maybe you can win 1 out of 1,000 matches or whatever, but the way the learning has evolved, it's, amazing. And you can, I was just listening to a podcast with Mark Andreessen this morning and Lex Fridman, and they were talking about how you could say to Chat GPT, okay, here is the view of the Nazi party, here's the view of the Communist Party, let's put them together and see where it goes. Or you can say, hey, we should not do genetically modified vegetables, and make the argument for why we should do genetically modified vegetables. And you can actually, if you get to the ones with the guardrails off, you can say, and make it rancorous and make it mean-spirited and argumentative and prove the other side wrong. Or you can actually say, have these two positions, debate both of those positions, steel man the argument, and see what kind of compromise you can get to. So the possibilities of this stuff are mind-boggling. And they'll really be good for humanity, I believe, in the long haul. But there's going to be some scary episodes along the way. I mean, there's definitely some real danger, and I think that's what's manifesting today is social media and just how easily people are brainwashed.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much everything that's ever come up in the world. You'll find ways to use it for good or for bad. And so some are easier, but
yeah, because that's the argument against every technological advancement ever, whether it's Bitcoin or banking system or email. It's like, what will the criminals do with it? What will the pedophiles do with it? You're either going to stay and live in a thatched hut with no electricity and no running water forever, or at some point you have to say, no, we're going to keep evolving as a civilization, and challenges and problems are going to come up, and we're going to have difficult problems to solve, but we'll work on them. Right? It's a philosophy.
Yeah, going back to one of the things you said earlier about one of the fears is it's going to steal jobs and things like that. I don't know that I buy that. A friend of mine, a very innovative thinker, he said he saw a stat. I don't know where the stat's from or if it's accurate. You know, that's the way stats are. You can make a stat prove whatever you want. But he said that 60 to 70% of jobs that our kids will work do not exist yet. And so, yeah, sure, it might take jobs. That doesn't mean new jobs don't get created based on the new world that we're going to see. I like to go back and think of Back to the Future. My friends and I were joking about that on a text thread chain. Back to the future now is we're farther into the future than Back to the Future was, and it's just funny to think what they thought the future was going to be like compared to what it was. But yeah, we don't know what the future will hold, and I do think that the AI world is exciting, and there will be good and bad that comes with it, but a lot of new jobs, and who knows what my kids are going to be doing in 25 years.
We thought we were going to get flying cars, and instead we got toxic Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really, and the statistics are absolutely there. The number of jobs created by that. My sister-in-law, she was a typesetter when she married my brother 40 years ago or whenever it was. She set type with letters like they did for newspapers, where they would, to put the letter, the word the, they took a T and H and E. So that's what she did for a job. So of course her job was obsolete. But now look at digital printing and 3D printing and say how many millions of jobs have been created that replace the people who used to do type blocks. And you could just use that example over and over and over again. So one of the things I have for you that I wanted to talk about is what are the traits you see of the best leaders? You've worked with a lot of people over the years and on a really intimate basis, and you get to see people in other companies and you compete against leaders in other companies. What do you see that you think makes people amazing in our space?
That's a great question. It's actually something I was thinking about with you. So on paper, you look at Randy Gage, and I thought about this when I was listening to yours and Jeff's conversation. You and Jeff might even be more different than you and me on paper, right?
Right.
But I actually loved one of the things Jeff said. He said, I am grateful that you introduced me to so many good people. And I'm sure he's talking about Wes Anderson, Billy Looper, a lot of these guys that you'd played softball with. And when I think about that, we can get stuck in this space as a person and think my morals or my values are this. And so that's what is correct. And everybody else needs to believe that. That is the way. And I don't know that that's a good leader. A good leader is somebody who has their morals, their values, and then that they can stick to those. That's the key. Finding out what you believe in and then sticking to it, but also not forcing that on anyone else and respecting what other people believe, but also just that part about sticking. I've got 4 kids, and my oldest is an 18-year-old, just graduated high school. And it's hard for me to not, like, I'm thinking like, you need to be more mature, but she's 18. But as I think right now, if there's one thing that I could have her learn, it's just, I just want her. I think people say, go and find out who you are. And I don't know if that's what I mean, but find out what you believe in and then really stick to it. And that might change as you go. Politically, I used to be here and then here, I'm learning constantly, and there's different things, but I think a really good leader is somebody who believes in something and sticks to it, but can also come across and listen to what somebody else might think. And I'm not talking, when I'm saying what you believe in, I'm not necessarily saying religiously or ethically. It can be whatever, even in business, whatever it is. You have to know what you believe and you have to stick to it, but also be willing to listen to somebody else and what they believe in and why. And so that's something that I've come to appreciate a lot lately, is somebody who has that firm foundation of what they believe in, but also can listen and appreciate what somebody else. And maybe why I think so much about that is I didn't have a really, really strong opinion on, let's take in COVID. Some people, it was black and white, and you were here or you were here, and I could step back. And even my wife and I had differing opinions, and her family and most of my family. And so I could step back and honestly learn, like, a lot of these guys aren't that far off, but they'll get together and argue for 2 hours at dinner over the dumbest things. And so it's just, I saw so much of that over the last couple of years, where I just really appreciated when I could get with someone who maybe didn't think like I did, but was still open-minded enough to hear me out, and you move on, you learn from it. So that's something that I've been on quite a bit lately. Open-minded, but convicted. You'd have to have a conviction in what you believe, but also be open-minded to somebody else.
What do you think? What is the biggest mistakes you see leaders making?
Kind of what I talked about earlier, selfishness. If it comes back to greed, if it comes back to what is pushing you? Is it about, it's no different than what you just talked about, the narcissistic platforms, right? Like, why so I have a brother who's been through hell the last few years, gone through divorce, everything. And he's had these opportunities to go and travel alone. And he said, it sounds horrible. I'm not with my kids. I'm not with my wife. But it's the first time he went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And he said, wow, it was amazing. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and I didn't feel like, just like you said, I didn't need to take pictures to show somebody. I didn't need to prove to anybody that I was there. I just got to go and I got to climb and I got to listen to stories of people. But I wasn't there to take pictures, to take selfies, to prove it was something. And he said it was so much better doing it that way than having to, like you said, turn the phone around and show everyone where he's at. He went and did it and nobody knew. Came home and he just said that it was so much better being able to do a trip like that, as opposed to doing a trip to tell people about it or show people. And so I just think in this world, we just get, so caught up in trying, why are we doing things? That's the question. Why do you do things? And if it's not for the right reason, then I think that can be harmful. And I think, honestly, I think people see through it. I really do. Eventually,
Yeah.
they'll see right through it. So if you're a leader, I'll tell a story about my dad. You know, the very first week that I was working with Agile, there was an event, and I'm doing the customer service thing, and my dad's president of the company, and they went out to do an event. This was before you were even there yet. It was like right at the beginning. Schrader's got a bunch of people, and I hear the story about. They said, you know, we were there, and there weren't enough chairs, and so you just had a whole bunch of people standing around, and there was this guy dripping in sweat, sleeves rolled up, putting all of the chairs up. And nobody knew who it was, thought it was one of the hotel employees. And then they invited the president of the company to get up on stage. And it was my dad that was the guy sweating because he was setting up all the chairs. I just think a good leader is someone who's never going to ask someone to do something that they're not willing to do first, right? Little things like that. It sounds maybe like a cliche, but those are the things that make a difference.
Eric Gamio over at Fusion, he's still milking it to this day. He has a picture of me taping down a cord in a meeting room because they had a projector and the cord wasn't taped. And of course, somebody's going to trip over that at the meeting if it's not. They kept calling the staff and nobody was coming. So I just went and I got some tape and I was taping it. So he took a photo of that and he uses it in his training all the time to say, here's a guy, here's a diamond director, and he's doing this. How many? It really is an important lesson for our space that people, I mean, we have that culture as a society where there is a lot of entitlement mentality and we just expect everything is supposed to be done for us. And no, there is a real part of leadership that's so important, modeling that behavior. It's funny when you're telling the story of your brother, I'm thinking there's probably going to be 3,000 people who listen to this and their heads are going to explode when they say, he was at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro and he didn't post it on Instagram. I would trade my mother in for that shot. You know how many likes and shares that post would have got? I mean, that's where we're at. It's just but it's still, I mean, this is if you could get back in that DeLorean of Back to the Future and say, okay, what time do you want to go to? This is the moment you want to come to, I believe. This is literally the most exciting time in human history. And we are so blessed to be alive for this. And putting it with our space, I think it's true for direct selling too. This is the time. I keep telling everybody I'm working with, like, man, in 2030, you know what you're going to be talking about? You're going to be talking about 2023 and 2024. And saying, oh man, if I could go back in time and do that over. We were just coming out of COVID. The world was in economic meltdown. There was 2 billion people who were re-evaluating their lives and looking to do work that had more meaning and more contribution. And there was 50,000 people who worked at theme parks that got shut down in COVID who realized maybe working at a theme park isn't such a great occupation. And there was 200,000 people who worked on cruise ships, which were sitting in dry docks for 2 years, who were thinking, maybe the cruise industry isn't the best way to take care of my family. And the millions of people who worked in shopping malls, which were shuttered, and you know, on and on and on, the restaurants, the bars, to everything. I think we're living in a moment of reckoning right now where people are, you'll see, you're coming over here on Sunday. I was down Kalakaua Avenue, which is it's like Rodeo Drive of Hawaii. And I'm kind of shocked at how many empty stores there are, boarded up places. That this is the prime. Here I'm at the Sheraton Waikiki, and there's shops closed up here. The pizza place closed during COVID. They never reopened. The You can just see that the economy here is really impacted. And
Sure.
fascinating thing. We were talking about Jeff Higginson, and we have our mutual friend Vladimir over there in Russia.
Yeah, I
And
speak with Vladimir quite a bit.
well, what people would be shocked, what I was shocked to learn, is that our business is exploding in Russia right now. Whereas if I had any client come to me and say, Randy, we want to open Russia, I'd say, are you out of your mind? That is the last place on earth you would ever open. They're in a hot war. They're under sanctions. The economy's melting down. It's not going to get better until somebody assassinates Vladimir Putin, you know. But the truth is, the economy is so terrible over there, and everything is so uncertain that the companies that are still operating there are exploding with growth. And it's kind of an example of how, like 2008, I mean, we were kind of won the genetic lottery with Agile, the fact that we were doing business in 2008 when the economy was melting down. The US economy is so huge that when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. And the US economy got so bad in 2008. It's even 2000, you could say the dot-com meltdown, again in 2008. And those were the heyday years for growth for us. And I think that's how people are going to look back at 2023 and 2024, because of the economic need that's out there right now. And I really believe the world has made a philosophical transformation. And there's at least 50 million jobs, maybe 100 million jobs, that in January of 2020 looked like an amazing career track to be on. If you were a vice president of Disney Cruise Line in January 2020, you were saying, man, I have got one of the best jobs in the world. But fast forward to May 2020, you were probably thinking, I have to have the worst job in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's been a global impact of that. And this is what our people in our space need to be making the most of right now.
Yep. No, I agree. So little things that you have to pick up on. But one of the things I'll say, Randy, going back to your original question about leadership, what I was always impressed with, as you know, at Agile, we had Agile Cares. And there were people that would donate money. They would donate money for quote unquote the post on social media, right? They would do it in front of people. But what I was always impressed with is you donated always without people even knowing about it. And that was something I talked about with Jeff quite a bit. And it was something like, this Randy guy, he has his beliefs and he sticks to them. And it was something that was always impressive to me. It wasn't for the Instagram post. So that's a good leader.
I have 2 companies I'm working with right now to help them set up foundations that they can partner with their distributors. To think of the trips we had at Agile where we were painting those schools and donating books to them or computers to them or stuff. I just really, so Ann Feinstein, Jeff and I were talking about 2 weeks ago, and I said something, and as soon as I said it, they both said, oh my God, that's so true. I said, I believe there are 30 to 40,000 MLM distributors in the world right now who would tell you the greatest moment of their career was the time they spent with Agile.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah, without any question. We had a lot of fun. We did a lot of good things. That was an amazing run, honestly. If you think about all of the things that we were doing, it was a lot of things. And that goes back to that same what is a bad leader? It's someone who gets stuck in greed, because so many good things happening and a little bit of greed was able to take that whole thing. And that's what it was, just someone who wasn't content with what they had and wanted a little bit more than what the company was going to make. Why not just be content with what it's doing?
So here's my question for you. Those guys who took us over and destroyed it, and they did the same for Clean Easy, and they did the same for Longaberger Basket, and they bankrupted every company they ever stole from, which was all of them. Did anyone or is anyone ever going to go to prison for that? I hope.
I have tried to stay so far away from that. I don't know. I hear from our friend Jeff Warwick, one of the attorneys, that he every once in a while hears about it. And I know Longaberger and those guys, Longaberger lost way more. They had way more into that than we did.
Tammy Longaberger even lent them like $1 million or something after they bought her.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
she never got.
There was so much more there. That's a sad story there. By the end, we were all just happy to get out, because it was, for me, they were starting to just blatantly lie and ruin my reputation. So for me, it was more of a, hey, I can't sit here while you can lie about me. And I'm not going to go and lie. It's not who I am. So this is unfair. You get to just say whatever you want. So it was one of those things. And I had a contract. So I've got this non-compete, this contract. And I'm like, tell me what I can do. So it was, that was the hard part for me is, it's like trying to have a fight with a mobster, and you've got principles, and you're not going to kill someone, but they'll shoot your mom or whatever, So it was just, I just needed to get out of it. And like I said, it was an amazing opportunity for me to learn of the things not to do. And it's pretty simple. I mean, it's really not a hard equation. It is, if A plus B equals C, that's what you can spend. It's not a hard business principle. Don't spend more money than you're making.
But it wasn't even that when you say that, it sounds like, they didn't know how accounting worked. That wasn't the case here. But they were just blood suckers who were, he set up that management company, and he had his kids running the management company, and he just sucked all the cash out of all those companies.
But what I'm saying is, like I told you, Jeff and I turned our company around. We were making millions our first year of profit, but it just wasn't enough. And when that's not enough, that you have to, it doesn't let, you just have to, it's never enough. And so I'm not even gonna get into what they were like, all of what they did. And all of their companies weren't profitable. So that's probably it, is they took over maybe 12 or more companies, and a few of us were bankrolling everybody.
Yeah.
So.
And they thought, because what they did was, and I hope everybody who listens or watches this learns from this, there's two sides of the coin. I just did one of these chopping it up with Peter Sorensen, who is a guy I sent to Orion at Cincino, and he became, this was a guy who flirted with bankruptcy. Anyone who didn't watch the show with Peter Sorensen, you got to go and watch that one. This was a guy who flirted with bankruptcy 2 or 3 times, and got with Cincino. He's now on the list, like Forbes has the list of the 100 wealthiest people in America. He's on that list for Denmark. He's one of the wealthiest people in Denmark. And part of it was he became the #1 income earner. And so he makes a great bonus check. But he bought like 70,000 shares of the company. It's a public company, and the shares have gone through the roof. So there's that side of it. And then there's these assholes that bought us, and they came in and said, we're a public company. Now you're going to be able to get stock. and you'll be able to buy the stock. And I looked at this and I'm like, I remember Ann and I, we were having, it was probably here in Hawaii because we did so many incentive trips here. So we had an incentive trip and we had a dinner, and that's when we first met the new guy, the new CEO. And so Ann and I were talking, we hadn't sat down to eat yet, and he came up and lied about you. Because he came up, hey, how you doing? I'm here to, and we're like, hey, we have this country with 15 products and 12 of them are out of stock because obviously they weren't paying their vendors. They weren't, you know what I mean? All that. And he looked us in the face and lied to us and said, oh, I think Jeremiah just, I think he didn't order those products, or he mixed up the inventory, because I approved all that production, this time or whatever. And Ann and I looked at each other and we said, oh my God, he just lying to our face the first second we met him, because we knew what had been happening in the corporate meetings and how you and Jeff were trying to get product produced and everything. And I was hearing stories about the sheriff coming to the warehouse with, to repossess because they hadn't paid the rent on the warehouse and shit like that. So it's like,
no. So imagine being in my shoes where you and Ann know me and that, but I'm hearing this from multiple sources. And so I'm having to, and I've got a contract, and in my contract it says I can't defame. I can't say anything bad about them. They actually put that in the contract. So
right.
I'm thinking I can't throw them under the bus. So I remember talking to the Ceccarellis, and they're telling me the same story, and they're asking me why I'm not paying for the product, and that my boss is saying that it's my fault. And I have to look at them and say, so over the last 10 years, this has never happened. And now a few months in, and you think it's my fault. And they kind of, and I have to help them come to the conclusion without doing it. But I just thought, these are trusted leaders. But if they're now telling the masses, I can't there's no way I will. So I at that point realized I can't risk my reputation. I've spent 15 years building what I felt was a very clean, honorable, hardworking reputation. 100%. And it could all go up, just be ruined. And so at that point, we were all looking for a way to get out. Unfortunately, we did everything we could to save it, because like you said, it had everything we needed, just that, it wasn't going to work with how they wanted to do business. So the second that there was an opportunity, they wanted to bring Glenn back. And when that happened, I was like, Glenn is your answer. Take him. Let me out. So they said, well, as long as you don't go and talk to anyone for a year. So they let me out and paid me for a year, which was great. I got to sit back and relax for a year. And they said, don't talk to anyone. And that was easy.
Yeah. And the best is what you did since and what you're doing. So so we're almost out of time because we have pressing things today, but I started a new tradition a couple of shows ago. This is kind of geared more to field people, but I think you will have a corporate slant that would be applicable just for fun and the inspiration and the learning lesson. The new tradition I started is, the last question I ask everyone is, what is the worst rejection that you ever had, approaching somebody, or what is what was the worst disaster during a presentation you ever had? And even though you've been in corporate, you've been to many 1,000 presentations, I'm sure. What comes to mind when I ask that?
Well, I don't know that this is going to be horrible, but you'll get a kick out of it because you'll know some of these guys. And there was Shy Samuel's group, and Shy Samuel is an amazing guy, but those guys, his group would speak their mind. And I was at an event with Joel Rockwood, and I don't know if you've ever been giving a presentation, but I was up giving a presentation with Joel. So it was a dual presentation. Kind of, we had some fun with it. Joel would talk about product, and we're doing this presentation, and mind you, Joel is the formulator of the product. He knows everything. And as he's giving this presentation, there are multiple people in the audience that just keep interrupting and correcting Joel in the middle of the presentation. And so it just went south really fast. It was misunderstanding. Joel obviously is giving correct information, but like you said, it's kind of like the telephone game. You learn something you think you know, and you should know, first of all, not to interrupt the presenter, but they just kept interrupting and correcting Joel as he's talking about our products. It was funny.
And he is, I mean, he really is a savant. He is truly one of those mad scientists that, like the guy in Back to the Future or Albert Einstein. I mean, he's that way. He's just a Elon Musk kind of.
He is that, but he also has things he can't do. He'll openly tell you, if you were to ask Joel to write, in fact, ChatGPT is probably going to be the best thing in the world for Joel, because he physically could not. If you said, Joel, write me a 1-paragraph, paper, a 2-paragraph paper on why you like trucks, he couldn't. He just mentally, that's outside of what he can do. But he can go.
But if you said, Joel, I need you to build a truck from scratch,
he would
using
do it.
twigs, he could do it.
He could do it. And so being interrupted on stage and told that he is not telling correct information, that gets Joel off a little bit. So it was, that was so crazy.
Yeah. People are so crazy. So they're correcting him like the ingredients are wrong.
Or telling him that he's got inaccurate information on his product. Mind you, he formulated the product, but no.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I can't remember what country we were in. But
by the way, I forgot, probably in Israel, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't know. He had a lot of lines.
I had groups all over. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to chide you. You broke the first rule of Fight Club, and I just found out about it.
What's the first?
That movie. It was the first rule of Fight Club is you can't talk about Fight Club or whatever. So the first rule of network marketing is you can't tell corporate people how much money they can make in the field, because then they leave and they go in the field. So I was just talking to Big Higgy yesterday, and a name came up who you will know, very near and dear to you, Julie. Yeah. And I was telling him, hey, we're working on a project. I'm doing a project with Jeff right now and Ann Feinstein. And we both were like, hey, what's going on with Julie? We need Julie. And he's like, oh, we don't have a chance. She's a distributor now with Maya, and she's making so much money. We'll never be able to get her.
She does do well. Yeah, she was one of the first ones and got in and has an awesome team and enjoys it. And for her, like I said, it's an authentic thing. She's an active gal.
She is.
Get to do
her
it
and her husband. Yeah, they're really. I love her husband. We just talk softball hours and hours at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we got Julie locked in. Sorry about that one.
All right. Well, listen, it's so great to catch up with you. We have to do another one of these when we have more time. I told everybody it'll probably be a chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 29. But so good to connect with you again. I appreciate you, your whole family, all you do. Give hugs to everybody for me, please.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me. Been an honor. Love what you're doing. And hopefully we can catch up this weekend.
All right, everybody watching, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. All right. Hey guys, I'm back, and I just want to thank you for listening or watching, and let you know, if you made it this far, you are a serious, credible leader. You're somebody committed to success, professionalism, and honing your craft, sharpening your saw. So I want to recommend a resource to you. It's a monthly newsletter called MLM Confidential. Leadership lesson every month, duplication lesson every month, something we call the dish, which is kind of the industry news, what's going on in the space, who's moving where, what company's shutting down, what company's opening up, what is the, the dish, the dirt of what's really going on behind the scenes that maybe the average person doesn't know. And there's a personal challenge every month. So check it out, mlmconfidential.com. I'll see you next week.